In the beginning, there was nothing. A vortex of chaos and endlessness was all that the universe was. But an egg came to float in that void. That egg hatched, spilling forth life, matter, and creation in the form of Arceus. Arceus, using his thousands of arms, created Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina, with it time, space, and antimatter, creating the universe as we see today. Giratina was banished to the distortion world, a sort of mirror to the universe, due to its violent nature. Arceus would also will into being the three Lake Guardians, Azelf, Uxie, and Mesprit, forming willpower, knowledge, and emotion, traits that would be imparted on all living things in Arceus' world. Untold years later, long after the Earth was shaped, super ancient Pokémon Groudon and Kyogre would fiercely battle in an area known as the Hoenn region. As Groudon would expand the land, Kyogre shaped the oceans, with the two meeting in ancient Hoenn, becoming rivals and fighting for dominance. Conflict would continue indefinitely, until a third being, Rayquaza, descended from the heavens to quell them both, where they would sleep deep in the earth to recover from this horrendous battle. Rayquaza remains protecting the earth from asteroids. Regigigas began to shape the continent in the wake of this battle, bombing several regions across the earth and creating great mountain ranges, including Mount Coronet in the ancient Hisui region. He formed 5 golems in his image: Registeel, Regice, Regirock, Regieleki, and Regidrago. Arceus creates 3 artifacts linked to Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina for unknown reasons, but the 3 orbs would be used to bring about their true form again in the future. Dialga and Palkia assumed fleeting forms, while Giratina remained locked away in the distortion world. Arceus would then create the Mew, known as the ancestor of Pokémon. It is hypothesized that all Pokémon descended from Mew in some way or another. Arceus, seeing his creation complete, disappeared. Around 300 million years before the beginning of the games, the Mew population slowly decreased. Such species as Armaldo, Relicanth, and Aerodactyl roam the Earth as the only Pokémon in existence. Not much happens in this period, as humans have yet to come into existence. It's believed that the Area Zero underground is formed in the Paldea region around 2 million years ago. Unfortunately, this led to almost all Terrapagos being wiped out, with one surviving by turning its body into a crystal. 1 million years after, the Great Crater of Paldea was formed. 20,000 years ago, a meteor hits the Galar region, with Eternatus residing in that meteor, remaining dormant for a time. 10,000 years ago, the Regis was sealed across multiple regions after being worshipped by humans for thousands of years prior. The reason for this is unclear, but it's believed that humans feared the Regis. Many years before the events of Pokémon Legends Arceus, an unknown legendary hero travelled around ancient Hisui, befriending several Pokémon, collecting all of Arceus' legendary plates. The hero was so powerful that they defeated Arceus, with Arceus granting the descendants of the hero's Pokémon special powers. These would become the noble Pokémon that were worshipped by humans in Hisui going forward. A few thousand years before Legends Arceus, the Celestica people migrated from Sinjoh, an area of Johto, to Hisui. They brought with them their culture, creating the Celestica Trail, the Celestica Ruins, and the Temple of Sinnoh. They worshipped the 3 mighty beings of creation along with Arceus, who is known to these people as the Almighty Sinnoh. In the Kalos region, the Kalos War occurred, causing the deaths of thousands of Pokémon and people alike. The king, AZ, loses his beloved companion Floette in the fighting. He uses infinity energy to create a machine to revive Floette, granting them both eternal life. AZ then uses this machine to end the war, killing countless Pokémon and people, but ultimately does indeed end the war. Floette became disgusted by the king's actions and fled. AZ, now burdened by immortality, begins wandering the planet in search for Floette, or to make amends for his past misdeeds. The king's brother, seeing the power of the machine, buried it in a secret location. Around the same time in Galar, the Darkest Day occurs, with Eternamax Eternatus releasing massive amounts of energy and causing the wild Pokemon of Galar to Dynamax and Gigantamax. 2 unnamed heroes along with Zacian and Zamazenta defeat Eternatus. However, their triumph was lost to time, despite the heroes becoming the kings of Galar. 2,000 years ago, the Hoenn region is constantly being besieged by meteors. The home of the Draconid people is wiped out, forming meteor falls. The meteors carried natural energy and caused an abundance in the region, awakening Kyogre and Groudon, who coveted this energy. Once again they clash, bringing death and destruction to the Hoenn people. The Draconid people made a fervent wish to Rayquaza, who heard the Draconids play and ended the fighting between the super ancient Pokemon. The Draconids, thankful for its help, begin to worship Rayquaza. 1,000 years before the events of the games, AZ travels to the Hoenn region and plants a tree outside the Cave of Origin. Sometime close to this, another primal energy-filled meteor strikes the Hoenn region, forming the crater of Pseudopolis City. In turn, Kyogre and Groudon would awaken after the impacts. The people of Hoenn once again wished on Rayquaza to save them. However, this time, Rayquaza would use the power of the Meteor himself and perform the first ever Mega Evolution, releasing his true form. Rayquaza swiftly defeats the two other super ancient Pokémon, removing their primal forms in the process and forcing them to return to yet another slumber. The Dractid people construct the Sky Pillar as tribute to Rayquaza. However, it is prophesied that another meteor would threaten Hoenn 1,000 years in the future, with the Draconids promising to pass down this prophecy to whoever would be around in the future to deal with this. 805 years before the games, the world-famous Naranja and Uva Academies were formed in Mesagoza in Paldea. Long before Legends Arceus, the Diamond and Pearl clans migrate to Hisui and take the name of the Celestica people as their own, despite not being from Sinnoh like the real Celestica people. They mistakenly worship Dialga and Palkia as the mighty Sinnoh, while they both derive from Arceus. This disagreement forms a generational feud between the two clans. Several hundred years before the games, the Sinnoh ruins are created by people from Hisui and Johto, linking the two cultures together. Pokeballs are also invented in this period. Around 700 years before the games, the Brass and Bell Towers are constructed as resting places for Ho-Oh and Lugia in Ecruteak City in the Johto region. 200 years later, in the same Johto region, the pharmacy in Cianwood City is built. Around the same time, Spiritomb is trapped in the Odd Keystone in Hisui. 400 years before the games begin, a drought strikes Azalea Town but is ended by Slowpoke yawning. The Slowpoke well is constructed, and the Slowpoke are held to high esteem from then onwards. 300 years ago, the events of Pokémon Legends Arceus begin. A strong trainer from the distant future is ripped from their world, dragged back in time by Arceus with a mysterious instruction: seek all Pokémon. The trainer meets with Professor Laventon, who invites them to become part of the Galaxy Expedition team. The Hisui region is besieged by a strange rift in the sky that appears to be causing the noble Pokémon of the region to act frenzied. The leader of the Survey Corps, Commander Kamado, asks the trainer to seek out and quell the noble Pokémon, while Laventon and Silene ask them to document the wild Pokémon of Hisui. The trainer succeeds in quelling the noble Pokémon with the help of the Diamond and Pearl clans. However, this does not seal the rift and the frenzies continue, even expanding. Kamado, long suspecting the trainer as being the cause of the rift, banishes the trainer, vowing to deal with the rift atop Mount Coronet himself. The trainer retreats with his friend Volo to a woman named Cogita, where she revealed both her and Volo are descendants of the Celestic people, and the trainer must seek out the three Lake Guardians, defeat them, and forge the Red Chain. The trainer succeeds and allies with the Diamond and Pearl clans, traveling to the Temple of Sinnoh. The trainer battles their way through the Galaxy Expedition Corps and defeats Kamado. The trainer then comes face to face with Dialga or Palkia. While the Red Chain does fail, they still manage to catch the Pokemon. Then, the other Guardian of Space-Time would appear, frenzied, in their original form. The trainer battles the remaining Dialga or Palkia, defeating them and catching them in the Origin Ball, a tool created by the remnants of the Red Chain. The rift is closed and the Hisui region is saved. Throughout this journey, the trainer has been collecting the 18 plates of Arceus. When 17 have been collected, Volo asks the trainer to meet them at the Temple of Sinnoh. Volo reveals that he has been working with Giratina the whole time, and it was Giratina who created the space-time rift above Mount Coronet. He attacks the trainer in the hope to secure the plates for himself, but the trainer successfully defends themselves, defeating both Volo and Giratina and securing the final plate from Volo. The trainer manages to capture and document every Pokemon in the Hisui region, and with 18 plates in tow, they obtain the Azure Flute. Climbing Mount Coronet once more, they play the flute, doing battle with Arceus in the Hall of Origin. The trainer repeats history and defeats Arceus, proving them to be worthy of Arceus himself. Arceus then grants them a fragment of himself to use in battle. The trainer would go on to live out the rest of their days, helping shape Hisui and Pokemon-human relations for future generations, and themselves to come. 200 years before the games begin, the historian Heath reaches the end of the Great Crater of Paldea and records their findings in an expedition journal. Heath talks about the insane discoveries the team has made, including Paradox Pokemon, Terrestrialized Pokemon, and a chance encounter with the strange disc Pokemon, Terrapagos. 150 years before the games begin, the Brass Tower is struck by lightning and burns to the ground. Lugia flees to the Whirl Islands. However, 3 unknown Pokemon, possibly believed to be Vaporeon, Flareon, and Jolteon, are resurrected out of pity by Ho-Oh. The inhabitants of Ecruteak City feared the Pokemon, as they had upset the balance of life and death, attacking them. The 3 beasts fled, never once retaliating against those people. Ho-Oh, ashamed of the humans' actions, fled and would never return. 50 years before the games begin, expert Pokemon trainer Mustard defeats Opal and becomes the Pokemon League champion in the Galar region. Around the same time, two protagonists leave their respective hometowns on an adventure, with one goal: to collect 8 badges, finish the Pokédex, and become the regional Pokémon League champion. Red leaves Pallet Town in the Kanto region, along with his rival Blue, in a bid to become Pokémon Masters. Both were entrusted with the Pokédex by Professor Oak, Blue's grandfather. Red travels across the region, capturing Pokémon and claiming gym badges, always one step behind Blue. The two boys become entangled with the plans of Team Rocket, a villainous gang hell-bent on lying, cheating and stealing their way across the Kanto region. It comes to a head at the Silphco building in Saffron City, after Giovanni, the team's leader, takes the president of the corporation and the entire building hostage. Red is there to save the day and defeats Giovanni, saving the Silphco employees. Red then returns to the previously closed Viridian City gym after claiming 7 badges, only to find Giovanni was the gym leader the entire time. Red defeats him once again, with Giovanni deciding to disband Team Rocket once and for all. Red turns his attention towards the Pokémon League, facing off and defeating Gary on the way to the badge check gates. He valiantly battles his way through the Pokémon League, crushing the Elite Four. Red, ready to face the champion, comes face to face with Blue, who had only just defeated Lance to claim the title of champion. Red defeats Blue one last time, smashing his dreams into smithereens. Finally, the new champion Red travels across the Sevi Islands to defeat the last remnants of Team Rocket. He helps the scientist Celio to connect the Kanto region and the Hoenn region together via the Pokémon Network Center. Roughly at the same time, Brendan or May moves to Little Root Town from Olivine City in the Johto region. Much like Red, they embark on an epic adventure after saving Professor Birch from a wild Pokémon attack. The two trainers become natural rivals, along with Wally, who they assist in catching his first Pokémon just outside of Petalburg City. Their goal, once again, is to become the champion of the Hoenn League. However, Team Aqua or Team Magma seek to awaken Kyogre or Groudon again to fulfill their aims to expand the sea or land respectively, meaning the trainer tangles with them at several points of their adventure. The trainers travel the region, collecting badges and filling out their Pokédex. However, despite several attempts to stop Team Aqua and Team Magma, they still manage to awaken their respective super ancient Pokémon, who seek the primal energy from eons past. The trainers travel to the Cave of Origin, where Kyogre or Groudon take their primal forms, but they are defeated by the trainers before the Hoenn region is completely destroyed. Brendan or May claims their final badge from the Suitopolis gym. They travel to Evergrande City and face off against Wally one last time. In this fantastic battle, Wally is defeated, clearing the way for Brendan or May to become the Pokémon champion. After Brendan or May becomes the Pokémon champion, a meteor is due to hit the Hoenn region. However, those at the Moss Deep Space Center hatch a plan to divert the meteor by creating a wormhole from the Infinity Energy, based off findings related to AZ using the ultimate weapon in the past. Zinnia, a descendant of the Draconid people, rejects this, as the meteor would just end up destroying another planet. Zinnia plans to wish for Rayquaza to destroy the meteorite and heads to the Spear Pillar in an attempt to summon it. Brendan or May follows, with Zinnia divulging the history of the Hoenn region. Rayquaza is summoned by Zinnia, but is unable to Mega Evolve, realizing that Brendan or May possess the meteorite that allows him to transform. Rayquaza faces the trainer and is defeated and captured, with the trainer being deemed worthy of it. Zinnia then battles the player in order to see Rayquaza's true form. Defeating Zinnia, Brendan or May flies into space on the back of Rayquaza, who uses its mega form to smash the meteorite. Deoxys is revealed to reside in the meteor and becomes aggressive, but Rayquaza and the trainer successfully defeat and capture Deoxys. Ethan or Lyra embark on their journey to become champion of the Johto and Kanto regions, since they share the same Pokémon League. They visit Professor Elm in New Barktown, who is studying Pokémon eggs and is entrusted with a Pokémon of their own in order to complete a task for Elm. They have to take an egg to Mr. Pokémon, who lives down the way. While they complete this task, Silver steals another of Elm's Pokémon and also commits to beating all 8 gyms across the Johto region, showing up to battle Ethan or Lyra often. Silver sees Pokémon as a means to an end, as tools to be used for strength. While Ethan or Lyra travel the scenic Johto region, like Red before them, they become embroiled in ruining Team Rocket's plans, who are determined to seek out their estranged leader. This involves saving the Slowpoke from Team Rocket, farming a red Gyarados rampaging at the Lake of Rage, disrupting their forced evolution signal, and finally defeating them at Goldenrod City's famous radio tower. In this time, they also befriend Celebi, who takes them back to see that Giovanni is indeed Silver's father. Then Celebi takes them forward to when Team Rocket had taken over the radio tower, with Ethan or Lyra defeating Giovanni at Tojo Falls. This in turn prevents him from rejoining Team Rocket. In completing these actions, 5 Kimono girls follow their actions closely, believing them to be the ones to recall Ho-Oh and Lugia. Ho-Oh had fled previously in search of one of pure heart, and returns due to the trainer being that such person. Ethan or Lyra then challenges the Pokémon League, trouncing Silver one last time, who has learned to be kind to his Pokémon. The trainer then goes on to defeat Lance to become the new champion of the Kanto and Johto regions. While Gyarados rages around the Lake of Rage, Lucas or Dawn watches the events unfold via a news broadcast while in the Sinnoh region. At some point in the last 300 years, the name of Hisui was changed to Sinnoh. Lucas or Dawn then venture out to Lake Verity, near Twin Leaf Town due to this report, in the hope of seeing a rare Pokémon, accompanied by their friend Barry. Attacked by Wild Starly after finding a briefcase with 3 Pokémon in it, they defend themselves with the Pokémon. Professor Rowan was the owner of the briefcase. Despite the theft, Rowan encourages the two to head off on their own adventure, with a Pokédex in hand and their new partner Pokémon. Both aim to obtain all 8 badges and become the champion of the region. Cyrus, however, has other plans. A mysterious leader of Team Galactic, Cyrus plans to remake the world in his image, a new world removed of emotion and spirit, employing Team Galactic to meet these ends. Lucas or Dawn and Barry tangle with Team Galactic at several steps, culminating in the rundown Temple of Sinnoh, now known as the Spear Pillar. Cyrus attempts to use the red chain to summon Dialga and Palkia, however, accidentally calls forth Giratina too, where he's sucked into the Distortion world. The region's champion, Cynthia, and Lucas or Dawn follow in an attempt to save Cyrus and quell Giratina's rage. Lucas or Dawn reaches Cyrus and they battle. With Cyrus's defeat, he walks away into the void. His fate remains unknown. The trainer then subdues Giratina and its violent rage subsides. They head to Sunyshore City to claim their final badge, and then to the Pokémon League, carving their way through Victory Road, the Elite Four, and Cynthia herself, in one of the most legendary battles the Pokémon universe has ever seen. Sometime after this, Ethan or Lyra heads to Kanto, defeating all gym leaders there, and eventually taking on Red at Mount Silver. 5 years after this, Lucas or Dawn are brought back in time by Arceus, with only a vague message to guide them: seek out all Pokémon. Hilbert or Hilda, along with their friends Sharon and Bianca, receive their very first Pokémon in the bedroom of Hilbert or Hilda's house in New Town in the Unova region. This, like the trainer before them, was a gift from a Pokémon researcher, Professor Juniper. The three decide to leave on their own journey to collect 8 badges, complete the Pokédex, and become the Pokémon League champion. You might be noticing a theme here. Upon arriving in Accumula Town, they encounter the nefarious Team Plasma, who announce their plans for Pokémon liberation to separate Pokémon from humans. Team Plasma believe that Pokémon owning and battling are akin to slavery, seeing that all Pokémon should be freed. Hilbert or Hilda then battle a mysterious man known only as N, who claims Pokémon are his friends. The trainer continues their journey, dealing with Team Plasma at several locations across Unova. Along the way, they learn of N's involvement in Team Plasma as their king, and he seeks to liberate all Pokémon, just like Team Plasma. They also learn of the original legendary dragon Pokémon, which was split into 2 parts due to its owners, 2 brothers, arguing about the importance of truth and ideals. This created 2 new Pokémon, who would represent both values. N, believing he has the ability to communicate with Pokémon, aims to capture Reshiram. Hilda or Hilbert also obtain a mysterious treasure called the Dark Stone. After earning their 8th badge, they travel to the Pokémon League where they defeat the Elite Four. Upon defeating them, they discover that N has already defeated the Unovan champion Alder, and promptly summons his castle, destroying the Pokémon League. N did indeed capture the legendary Pokémon Reshiram, who was part of the original dragon representing truth. The Dark Stone awakens in Hilbert or Hilda's bag, with the legendary Pokémon Zekrom, the embodiment of ideals, challenging the trainer. The trainer captures it and engages in battle with N, defeating him. Getsis, one of the members of 7 Sages and the leader of Team Plasma, reveals that he had a plan to separate people and Pokémon so he could be the only person in the entire world with Pokémon, with him using N as a tool the whole time. Getsis attacks Hilbert or Hilda, but is defeated by them. After defeating N and Getsis with Zekrom, N becomes sorry for all his wrongdoings, and flies off to distant lands on Reshiram. Hilbert or Hilda, Sharon and Bianca continue their journey in Unova and get recruited by an undercover officer codenamed Looker to discover and arrest the remaining 6 of the 7 Sages. After the arrest of all 6, Hilbert or Hilda returns to the Pokémon League, re-defeats the Elite Four, then challenges and defeats Alder, becoming champion of Unova proper. 2 years after Hilda and Hilbert starts their journey, Nate or Rosa begins their adventure in the Unova region, but this time they begin in Aspertia City. Nate or Rosa receives their first Pokémon from Bianca in Aspertia City. Together with rival and best friend Hugh, who hopes to take back his sister's Purloin from Team Plasma, they begin their journey to become the Unova League champion. In this time period since his defeat, Getsis and the Sages in Zoloin have reorganized Team Plasma into Neo Team Plasma, with the goal of taking over the Unova region. He recruits a scientist called Colress and asks the ninja trio called the Shadow Triad to further his goals. They seek the legendary Pokemon Kyurem to ensure their victory. After the trainers earn their 7th badge from Drayden, Team Plasma attacks Opal Lucid City with their giant warship, covering the city in unbreakable ice. The Shadow Triad takes the opportunity to try and steal the DNA splices from Opal Lucid Gym, an item that can unlock the true power of Kyurem. Nate, Rosa, and Hugh chase Team Plasma to Hubilao City, where after earning their final badge, they confront Zinzaloin, Colress, and the Shadow Triad at the Giant Chasm. After this, the Triad releases Hugh's sisters Purloin, now a leopard, who is now loyal to Team Plasma. Hugh tells Nate Rosa to go after Team Plasma and confront Getsis. Getsis has attempted to wield Kyurem's power for himself and tries to freeze Nate Rosa alive. However, N flies in on Reshiram, saving them. Getsis then uses Kyurem's power to turn Reshiram back into the White Orb. The DNA splices then allow Kyurem to absorb Reshiram's energy, becoming White Kyurem. It turns out that Kyurem was part of the original dragon, and when it became Reshiram and Zekrom, Kyurem was the leftovers of that original dragon. Nate Rosa defeats Kyurem, causing the two Pokemon to separate, then defeats an enraged Getsis. N suggests that Nate Rosa proceed to the Pokemon League. Heeding his words, Nate Rosa ascend Victory Road, defeat the Elite Four, and emerge victorious in a battle with the new champion, Iris. After returning home, Hugh's sister thanks Nate Rosa for helping her big brother and tells them that she has been dreaming of Zoroark calling her name. At Hugh's suggestion, they return to Victory Road, finding a Zoroark that leads them to the ruins of N's castle, where N and Reshiram challenge them to battle. After defeating N, he says goodbye to Reshiram and releases it by asking it to turn back into the White Orb to give to Nate Rosa. Nate Rosa climbs to the top of the Dragon Spiral Tower and faces Reshiram again, this time to capture it. At the same time as Nate Rosa's journey across Unova, Caleb or Serena begin a similar journey in the Kalos region. This is along with their friends Tierno, Shauna, and Trevor. They embark on an adventure after receiving their first Pokemon from Professor Sycamore. Sycamore tasks them with filling out his Pokedex and assisting in helping with his research on Mega Evolution. Throughout their travels, they come face to face with the mysterious Lysander and the evil Team Flare. Both are strangely obsessed with beauty in all things. Team Flare attempts to steal fossils, siphon power, and steal Pokeballs across the Kalos region, with Caleb or Serena stopping them at every turn. Even more strange is a mysterious giant AZ that they meet along the way. His origin and goals are unknown to the trainer. After collecting 7 badges, Lysander contacts Caleb or Serena, revealing himself to be the leader of Team Flare. Following a face-off at his lab and then Team Flare's headquarters, the trainer comes face to face with Xerneas or Yveltal, who Lysander plans to use their power to fire his ultimate weapon, the very same weapon that was fired thousands of years ago to end the Great Pokemon War. The trainer succeeds in stopping the legendary Pokemon and goes toe-to-toe with Lysander, who wields the power of Mega Evolution. However, as Caleb or Serena also wield this power, they come out on top. This also results in the imprisoned Daisy being rescued, who Lysander captured to obtain his key to the ultimate weapon. Lysander fires the weakened weapon anyway, burying it, himself, and destroying Team Flare's hideout. Caleb or Serena claim their last badge and take on the Pokemon League, taking down the Elite Four and champion Diantha. At the Victory Parade, AZ challenges the new champion to see what a trainer really is. Ultimately, the champion comes out on top, with AZ thanking them for freeing him. As his heart is unburdened, Floette returns to him, forgiving AZ for his past misdeeds, and the two are reunited once more. 2 years later, the timeline splits into 2 alternate realities. Either of these events fit with the previous and future events. In the paradise of the Alola region, Elio or Celine, after just moving to Alola, leave their homes on Route 1 to take on the Island Challenge, a challenge that falls outside of the Pokemon Leagues found in other regions. The trainer also befriends Lily, who carries the Pokemon known as Nebby in her bag as her companion. This occurs after the trainer attempts to defend Nebby from a flock of rabid Spearow, only to be saved by one of the island guardians known as Tapu Koko. Hala, the island's leader, or Kahuna, gives them their first Pokemon, along with his grandson Hau. The Island Challenge consists of 7 trials across the 4 islands and 4 island trials. These consist of certain challenges or fighting powerful totem Pokemon. Across Alola, the trainers run into Team Skull, a gang of kids who failed the Island Challenge, and in doing so, reject the tradition and become delinquents. They also block other trainers from completing this. They are also headed by the charismatic Guzma, who is denied being one of the trial captains. Another key member of the team is Gladion, a strong trainer who's partners with type Null. Both are encountered at various points in the journey. The party also run into the Aether Foundation, a benevolent group committed to the rehabilitation of sick Pokémon. Their leader is Lusamine. After defeating the island Kahuna on Akala Island, they are invited to meet her. However, a weird creature interrupts it by entering through a wormhole. Lusamine becomes very interested in this strange being. The island challenge continues, with the group carving their way through multiple challenges and assaulting Team Skull's hideout in Po Town. They once again end up at the Aether Paradise after Plumeria, yet another Team Skull member, kidnaps Lily and Nebby. Gladion, who overheard the situation, Hau and the trainer head for the Aether Paradise to see Lusamine attempting to bring back the Pokémon from earlier. Gladion and Hau give chase and tells Lusamine not to open the wormhole again, revealing that both Lily and Gladion are indeed her children. Lusamine disregards this and opens it up anyway, causing lots of wormholes to open around Alola, and alien Pokémon known as the Ultra Beasts begin pouring out of them. Elio or Celine defeats Lusamine, Guzma, and the Ultra Beast, but they manage to retreat into Ultra Space. For some reason, Nebby takes on a new form. Gladion grants Elio or Celine the Moon Flute and Sun Flute, then helps the party to get to Pony Island to continue their island challenge. Hapu is there, who the group met previously on Akala Island. She reveals the island has no kahuna, but Tapu Fini agrees to make her the new kahuna. Hapu even tells them about a ritual that needs to be completed at the altar of the sun or altar of the moon to summon the legendary Pokemon Solgaleo or Lunala, but they need the other flute to complete it. This is located on Executor's Island. Both Lily and the trainer travels there to obtain Lily's flute. At the altar, the duo is attacked by Team Skull, but Plumeria stops the fighting to try and find out what happens to Guzma. After hearing the reality of this situation, she lets them both continue to the altar. Once the flutes are played, Nebby is taken from the bag and evolves into Solgaleo or Lunala. Nebby has the power to travel through Ultra Space. This allows them to seek out Lusamine. The team successfully finds Lusamine and Guzma. A battle with Lusamine ensues, with her sending out the Ultra Beast Nihilego. Then Lusamine fuses with it, taking the role of the Pokemon in the battle. Nebby luckily manages to separate them, with Nebby transporting all the humans back to their dimension. Hapu takes Guzma and Lusamine to safety, while Lily claims she is not a trainer and Nebby would be happier with Elio or Celine, so they battle and the legendary Pokemon is captured. The trainer then heads to Mount Lanakila on Ula Ula Island, with Professor Kuki greeting them and announcing the Pokemon League has been set up. The trainer takes on 4 of the previous trial captains and kahunas who now make up the Elite Four, with the Professor being the final battle before they become champion. Once Elio or Celine becomes champion, there is a festival on Mele Mele Island, and the champion faces off against Tapu Koko. Finally, on the following day, Hau drags the champion to Hau'oli City, where Lily is set to leave on her own journey. Having been inspired by the champion, she sets off to the Kanto region. In Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the timeline splits when Lusamine opens up the initial wormhole, seeking to protect the world from Necrozma instead of seeking Nihilego. She and Guzma are abducted by Necrozma when opening up the wormhole after kidnapping Lily. The Ultra Recon Squad also meets with the trainer on several occasions and slowly reveals the true origins of Necrozma. Necrozma has travelled from their dimension after stealing all of the light. The trainer uses the flute at the altar. Guzma and Lusamine are spat out of the wormhole, with Nebby being attacked by Necrozma, subsequently being absorbed by it. Necrozma flees to another dimension. In an otherworldly city called Megalopolis, the trainer battles with Ultra Necrozma, defeating it and freeing Nebby. After the trainer becomes the champion, Team Rainbow Rocket attacks from another dimension, headed by Team Rocket's Giovanni, flanked by Lysander, Cyrus, Gettis, Archie, and Maxie. Colress, the very same from years before, helps the champion and Lily, and confirms Giovanni's plan was to travel across dimensions to seize control of the Ultra Beasts for his own gains. Whichever story you prefer can be accepted as canon. 3 years later, over in the Galar region, Victor or Gloria plans to leave their home of Postwick with their friend Hop. They both receive their first Pokemon from Hop's brother and undefeated champion, Leon. Both Hop and the trainer visit the Slumbering Weald, meeting a mysterious Pokemon. Sonia hands them their own Pokédexes, and Professor Magnolia also hands them Dynamax bands, allowing their Pokemon to undergo the phenomena called Dynamaxing. This allows Pokemon to grow in magnitudes and size and gain new moves. It is particularly popular in gym battles. The two leave on their journey to defeat all 8 gyms. Along the way, they run into another trainer called Marnie, who is followed by her hooligan-like fans, Team Yell. Moreover, they also run into an organization headed by Chairman Rose, who happens to be the chairman of the Pokemon League and the Macrocosmos. The Macrocosmos seeks to provide sustainable energy for the Galar region through Dynamaxing. which in turn is caused by Galar particles. This energy is causing wild Pokemon to Dynamax at random, but thankfully, Leon is on hand and periodically stops them throughout the story. Rose has also endorsed a young trainer called Bede in the Gym Challenge. Bede takes the Gym Challenge at the same time as Gloria or Victor, with the trainers going toe-to-toe on several occasions. The duo, during their journey, visit the Isle of Armor off the east coast of Galar, where they meet another rival, Clara or Avery, along with the former Galar champion Mustard. Mustard takes them into his dojo to become students. The course involves taking a series of trials with their new rival, eventually coming head to head when they battle one another. Winning the battle, Victor or Gloria get to meet the legendary Pokemon Kubfu and take on the Tower of the Two Fists, ending in a battle against Mustard and his own Kubfu. After taking home the win, Kubfu learns to evolve into either form of Urshifu when shown the Scrolls of Darkness or Waters. Sometime later, the duo and Hop visit the Crown Tundra, a frozen region south of Postwick. Upon arrival, they meet Peony, a retired gym leader and a strange brother to Chairman Rose. He recruits them to become part of his exploration team, asking them to research the mysteries of the Crown Tundra. This leads them to meet Calyrex, a Pokemon and former king of the region. The two help it reunite with its trusty steed, Glastria or Spectria. Their exploration has them research ruins around the Crown Tundra and encounter the legendary giants, or the Reggies. Finally, the two spend time hunting new forms of the Cantonian legendary birds, where Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres have adapted to the Crown Tundra, taking on new radical forms. In the championship battle at Wyndon Stadium, Chairman Rose interrupts the match by reawakening Eternatus. Chairman Rose knows that Galar is due to be hit with an energy crisis in the far future, and believes Eternatus is the one that can solve this issue. The trainer and Hop return to the Slumbering Weald in the hope of finding the legendary Pokemon that prevented the darkest day all those years ago, only to find the rusted sword and rusted shield. Heading to Hammerlock, Leon, Hop, and the trainer confront Rose, defeating him, with Leon attempting to capture Eternatus. Once it is defeated, Eternatus Eternamaxes and turns into its true form. Luckily, the rusted items summon Zacian and Zamazenta, with a fierce battle ensuing between the legendary Pokemon and Eternatus. Hop and the trainer are successful, and Eternatus is captured. Several days later, the championship match continues, and Victor or Gloria defeats the undefeated Leon to become the champion of Galar. After the championship battle, Swordwood and Shieldbert, two descendants of the Galarian monarchy, seek to restore their throne, enraging Pokemon across the region and forcing them to Dynamax. It turns out, they plan to take control of Zacian and Zamazenta, resulting in them being lured out and driven into a frenzy, forcing the champion to battle them once again. Once the legendary Pokemon is quelled, the opposite of the two appears and the champion catches it. Hop and the champion have one final battle. Sometime later, Florian or Juliana moves to Paldea. They meet their new neighbour, Nemona, and the trainer wishes to start their own Pokemon journey. The pair are gifted with their first Pokemon from Director Clavel, the headmaster of Naranja or Uva Academy, the very school the two will be attending. Nemona is already a champion-ranked trainer, but decides to raise a new Pokemon instead. The trainer or Nemona encounter a Miraidon or a Koraidon, who is injured after crash landing near Capo Poco, who, in turn, saves the two from a pack of Houndour. They also meet Arven, the child of a Pokemon professor, Truro or Sada. Arven identifies the Pokemon, although the professor has been working in Area Zero and Arven hasn't seen them in many years. Eventually the students arrive in Messagoza to attend school. In turn, they run into Penny, a new student from Galar, who is being bullied by a group of delinquents. After being called by the professor, admitting the legendary Pokemon used to be theirs, they ask the trainer to look after it. They are then sent on an independent field study, being asked to find their personal treasure. This includes 3 tasks: defeating all 8 gyms as encouraged by Nemona. The hacker Cassiopeia requests them to take down Team Star across 5 bases in Paldea, an alleged group of bullies previously expelled from the academy. They belong to the same group harassing Penny, and Arven requests them to help defeat the 5 Titan Pokemon, massive creatures that guard the Herba Mystica. This herb has immense healing capabilities. The trainer hunts down the Titan Pokemon, including an odd Paradox Pokemon, Iron Treads or Great Tusk. However, the trainer also learns Arven is hunting down the Herba Mystica to heal his sick Mabostiff, who was severely injured a while ago. The Herba Mystica is used to help recover the legendary Pokemon's power, allowing Koraidon or Miraidon to traverse various new terrains. The trainer, barreling through the 8 gyms and clashing with Nemona at every turn, eventually takes on the Pokemon League, triumphing over the Elite Four and the current champion Geeta, then trouncing Nemona in one final battle. The trainer succeeds in taking down the 5 leaders of Team Star, but it's revealed that they themselves were being bullied, and since Clavel wiped the records of bullying in the school, Team Star were branded as the bullies, despite them being the victims who formed the group to protect one another. The previous staff even resigned over this event. Cassiopeia reveals themselves to be the big boss of Team Star. Meeting at the academy at night, Clive, who's been encouraging the trainer the whole time to take down Team Star, was unsurprisingly Director Clavel. The trainer beats him in a battle, only for Penny to reveal she was the hacker the whole time, with the two battling once again. After losing to the trainer, the Team Star leaders then turn their bases into training facilities for Pokémon trainers. During these adventures, the students take part in 2 field trips, the first being to Kitkami. The field trips are in conjunction with the Blueberry Academy in the Unova region. 2 of their students, brother and sister Kieran and Carmine, are Kitkami natives and meet the group in Mosai Town. The trainer learns of the legend of the Loyal Three and Ogerpon, with the 3 being revered as heroes and Ogerpon as evil. Carmine and the trainer encounters Ogerpon that night. It is shortly revealed that the Loyal Three were actually the villains of the story and Ogerpon was the real victim. Kieran was kept from learning about the encounter with Ogerpon by Carmine and overhears this revelation, feeling betrayed. The Loyal Three return from their graves and steal 3 of Ogerpon's masks from Kitkami Hall, and the trader sets out to retrieve them. Kieran convinces the townsfolk of Ogerpon's innocence. Ogerpon decides to join the trader, making Kieran feel even more betrayed, and the siblings return to Blueberry Academy. With all of this concluded, the group begins their journey into the great crater of Paldea, searching for the professor. They encounter various Paradox Pokémon, creatures resembling modern Pokémon from the past or the future. Eventually, near the base, they discover the professor's lab. And the professor is dead, with an android replica communicating with them the whole time. The professor succeeded in inventing a time machine, bringing forward or back Pokemon from different time periods. This included Koraidon and Miraidon, along with a second, more aggressive one, which eventually killed the professor. The android asks them to destroy it and the time machine, but a fail-safe initiates, causing the android to attack, who is also in possession of the other legendary Pokemon. Koraidon or Miraidon was previously injured by this Pokemon, so it's reluctant to fight. Despite this fear, it learns to battle again, helping defeat the robot. The android travels to a different time period before the time machine is destroyed, as it cannot be done while the AI remains in the present. A little while later, the students are invited to Blueberry Academy by the director Serrano. They arrive at the academy and explore the terrarium, a massive undersea dome that holds 4 different biomes. Upon seeing Carmine again, she mentions Kieran has become abrasive to everyone, obsessed with getting stronger in order to defeat the trainer. Kieran becomes the champion of the Blueberry League in this time, dethroning Drayton, Drayton's grandson. As the trainer is already the Paldean champion, they are allowed to challenge the Elite Four directly, ending with a fierce battle and a hard-fought victory against Kieran. He is visibly upset at this loss, since his training amounted to nothing. Briar has received permission to visit Area Zero from the Paldean League. On return to Paldea, as the Blueberry students accompany them, the group are allowed to visit Area Zero to help Briar to find Terrapagos. Kieran agrees, hoping to catch the legendary Pokemon for himself. Florian or Juliana receive the Indigo Disc from Rika. Traveling to Area Zero and to the Crystal Cave, the group learn of the Stellar type, containing every type combined. As they delve deeper, they find the dormant form of Terrapagos. Upon awakening, Kieran throws a Master Ball at it, planning to use it against the Paldean champion. Briar encourages the two to battle, and Kieran unleashes Terrapagos. Unfortunately for him, he loses control of it, with its power overflowing, absorbing the terrestrial energy. Carmine and the trainer attempt to fight Terrapagos, but Carmine is defeated swiftly. Kieran then joins forces with Florian or Juliana, with the two taking on Terrapagos and stopping it. Following the battle, Briar publishes a retelling of the expedition in a book, giving a copy of it to the player as a gift. After receiving it, the trainer visits the crystal pool in Kitkami, causing Terrapagos to emerge from its Pokeball and a strange mist to appear. Professor Sado or Professor Churro emerges from the mist, who seems to have somehow been transported through time and space. The professor becomes fascinated by various things the player tells them about, especially the information presented in Briar's book. Wishing to study it further, the professor trades it for their cherished copy of the Scarlet Book or Violet Book before the mist disappears and they're transported back to where they came from. And that just about does it. Where Legend ZA will appear on the timeline is anyone's guess, but it's almost certainly set in the near future. We'll just have to wait and see.
There's a folktale in Kitakami, a myth, a legend that's come down from old Hisui of a creature that survived from the ancient times. See, modern day, Ursaring does not evolve. It is the final evolution in an evolutionary chain that has stayed that way for hundreds of years. But in old Hisui, the area now known as Sinnoh, it was said that you could evolve your Ursaring into Ursaluna, an incredibly powerful and protective Pokemon. But rumor has it that in Kitakami there is a form of this creature that survived, known as the Blood Moon Beast. Perrin, a descendant of Adaman of the Diamond Clan, is on the lookout for this Pokemon, and she reckons that if you get very good at photography on a misty night, you might be able to find this Pokemon in the Timeless Wood. And sure enough, you can. You battle it and it has a health bar like a Titan Pokemon. It's the only Pokemon like this. When you catch it, you can hatch eggs from it and you can get Teddiursa, but the Teddiursa will never evolve into this form of Ursaluna ever again. It seems to be a one-of-one Pokemon. And oh, you can bet that it's got Pokedex entries. In Scarlet, it says that it crossed the sea and drifted ashore in a new land. Surviving in this place led it to take on a unique appearance and gain special powers. In Violet, it says that this special Ursaluna can see in the dark with its left eye and protects itself with mud that is as hard as iron. For I believe that the Blood Moon form of Ursaluna isn't just a species of Ursaluna, a group of Pokemon that have survived down here in Kitakami. No, as I mentioned, it is one of one. I believe that the Blood Moon form of Ursaluna is the last surviving Ursaluna. Its body has changed and warped and transformed as a result of living for so very long. This would explain, of course, why any new cubs that hatch from its eggs can no longer evolve into this form of Ursaluna, but the question is how? How would a Pokemon like this survive here in the Timeless Woods? Well, let's just take a little look at the name, shall we? Timeless Woods. As if time doesn't move on here. A Pokemon that might find itself here in the woods might find itself staying the same way forever. There are many ghosts that inhabit the Timeless Woods, and you can even find white-striped Basculin here. Another form from the days of Hisui. So something about this forest makes time stand still. Despite how it looks, this form of Ursaluna hasn't changed to like steel type from the ground type, or normal hasn't changed into ghost. It's not some kind of possessed creature. In the old days, Ursaring used to evolve into Ursaluna thanks to a resource called the Peak Block, which is just simply no longer available in modern day. Ursaring cannot evolve into Ursaluna anymore. There's certainly no indication of the Peak Block being available in Kitakami, and if it was there, it wouldn't be available in this woods. The Peak Block is found in marshy areas like the marshes in the south of Hisui. And what's more, Teddiursa and Ursaring don't live in the Timeless Woods. Again, this Pokemon is a lone wolf, or lone bear, so to speak. It says in the Pokedex that this Pokemon crossed the sea, suggesting that it came from the Hisui region. Now, I believe Hisui and Kitakami to be pretty much connected, but that didn't mean it didn't come by way of sea. It likely swam south of the Hisui region as its kind were dying out, and found its way following a stream upwards. Up, and into Kitakami. There actually is a stream that runs from the north up to the top of the Oni Mountain. There, in the very center of the Oni Mountain, is a pool that has very particular properties. A crystal-like structure that's very similar to the one found in Area Zero. You can even find Glimmer and Glamora here. This place has the music of Area Zero that will even play little riffs from time to time. It's a sacred place. Heck, there's even a wild and unique Milotic here. According to Briar, studying the area of Kitakami and studying this pool specifically might be able to help her in bringing the power of terrestrialization to other regions. In Paldea, it seems that terrestrialization is happening because the crystals in Area Zero seem to have an energy that flows through the earth and creates Terra Raid dens. As well as that, Herba Mystica grows and certain Pokemon eat it, and they can even become Titan Pokemon. If the same is true here, it explains why there's Terra Raid dens all over Kitakami. And it explains why the herbs that were put in the mochi that the heroic trio ate caused them to become gigantic and have health bars like Titan Pokemon. And perhaps that ties into Ursaluna. Ursaluna is the only non-Titan Pokemon to have a health bar like this. Perhaps it's been getting its nutrition from the leftover remains, or rather, a source similar to Herba Mystica. If we follow the water from the crystal pond at the top of the Oni Mountain, it actually goes off in two directions. One runs north, up towards where I believe the Hisui region or Sinnoh region to be. This is possibly where Ursaluna swam from. The other pools in the Timeless Wood. So I suspect that this Ursaluna has been getting its nutrition from this pool. This is where it gets its drinking water from. And it's the minerals that is in the crystals, in the water and in the earth that has allowed this Pokemon to survive for so very long. And also that it ends up inside of the herbs of the mochi that allows the other Pokemon to become Titans. I've said, of course, in different Pokemon theories that there's a lot of tie between the life force of Pokemon as it displays itself in Mega Evolution and Z Crystals, Gigantamaxing and terrestrialization, and right here we have another example of how the life force of Pokemon might be affected. This very idea was actually explored pretty recently in the new Pokemon Snap game, and it's interesting to note that when you find Ursaluna, you do it through a little Pokemon Snap minigame, where the boss Pokemon of that game are said to be the actual Pokemon from hundreds of years earlier, the Lumina Pokemon depicted on ancient cave walls, because they've been feeding off of the Lumina energy inside the plants. This is the same here for Ursaluna. And this makes sense, because if this Ursaluna is the last living Ursaluna that's lived well beyond its years, changing it into the Blood Moon form, it makes sense how Perrin found out about it, because ultimately there will be stories from old Hisui of the dying out of the Ursaluna species. And this information will have been passed down through her family from the time of ancient Hisui, and so she will be the last person in her clan likely to see this Pokemon until ultimately you catch it. But with a Pokemon this cool, let's put some preservation efforts in and make sure it doesn't go extinct.
Hey, Pokemon Masters, Birdkeeper Toby here. Oh, I know, right? Poor Pidgeot. Say, what are you doing out here? I'm out here looking for my room key. That should be me. Yes, number 301. No one appears to be home to serve me, although that's not surprising given where we are. Damn, I could go on for ages, listen to me chit-chat. This is no place for that. Let's get out of the darkness of the lobby. Pokemon Masters, you know I am a Pokemon researcher, and you should also know that I am particularly interested in the supernatural claims about the Pokemon world. For example, who is the ghost girl from within Phoebe's room of the Elite Four? What was the deal with that Spiritomb from Sea Marvel, and did Lavender Town Syndrome actually ever happen? Of course, today I'm researching some supernatural claims from deep within the Eterna Forest. Eterna, derived from the word eternal, which is a great word to describe this place. I am talking, of course, about the abandoned old chateau. Oh, Stantler, you too? It's a shame with the holidays coming up, there'll be one less Stantler running around. Although I can't say I'm surprised, this house was once owned by some very rich people. Not anymore though, however, and no one really knows why. No one knows why this mansion was abandoned. But then that's why we're here, to investigate. And I'm glad you're here with me because the noise is like, whoa! I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Perhaps you'd feel more comfortable if you were better informed. Let me tell you everything we know about this mansion so far. Now, to the public eye, this used to be a luxurious mansion that was abandoned for an unknown reason, but it also used to be the home of the original recipe for the old gatto, a consumable sought after all over the Pokemon world. Of course, now it's just the home to ghost-type Pokemon, Ghastly, Haunter, and Rotom. Oh, you don't know about Rotom? Rotom is an electric and ghost-type Pokemon that is made primarily of plasma. I've done a lot of research on Rotom before, and some say it's a legendary Pokemon, and others say it's the ancestor to all Shuppet. Haha, some people in Alola even claim to use this Pokemon in their Pokedex. This is because Rotom can get inside the motors within machinery. Fans, lawnmowers, fridges, you name it. And while normally it's quite a playful Pokemon, a harmless prankster really, the evidence of this place suggests otherwise. There are ghosts within these halls, and we know that, not just the ghosts of Ghastly, Haunter, and Rotom, but there are rumors of human ghosts, departed spirits from beyond. An old man, a butler of this house perhaps, and a little girl are reported widely to have been seen within these halls, haunting them. The most common reason that spirits in folklore tend to remain bound to the earth is if they have some unfinished business. Of course, I have seen no such ghosts during my stay here, although something peculiar did happen in the library earlier. This old notebook fell on my head, seemingly out of nowhere. The text is worn and faded, you can't read it, although there was one passage I could make out. It said, "Something so peculiar should make off with the motor." What do you suppose that means? I guess it could be referring to Rotom. Oh, I've just realized! You're gonna love this. I have another old notebook that I found in the Sinnoh region. In fact, it's the only other one. And I believe that if you combine the two, perhaps its text also refers to Rotom. Take a look. I found it in the nearby Team Galactic headquarters found in Eterna City, and the text inside, as well as the design and name of the notebook itself, is the same with the one found in the library. Of course, that begs the question, what would Team Galactic want with this dusty old notebook? Well, it's possible they came here looking for Rotom. After all, there is a well-documented member of their team, Sharon, who appears to be somewhat obsessed with Rotom. He has a mysterious notebook himself, very clearly written by him and his research on Rotom, but amongst his notes was this old notebook, which clearly wasn't written by him, and has some clues about not only Rotom, but also what happened here in the old chateau. It's a story about a person and their toy robot that turns out to be being possessed by Rotom. The two become the best of friends, inseparable in fact, apart from one little problem in their relationship, which is they can't hug or touch because of the electricity that Rotom produces. It would simply be too deadly for the human trainer. However, there is a bit of an accident one day. The human trainer startles Rotom, and Rotom flees, but not before discharging a lot of its electrical power, leaving our author unconscious. When the author awakens, they go looking for Rotom just to let them know that they forgive Rotom, and eventually they do find each other again. They make up, they hug, and they remain friends for the rest of their lives. It's sweet, isn't it? But there's a problem here, Pokemon Masters. Have you worked it out? Just a moment ago, it was talking about how they hugged when they reunited, but a few paragraphs earlier, it was talking about how they couldn't possibly do that. They couldn't touch each other because of Rotom's devastating electricity. Now, it comes to mind that the writer must have been a child, because who else but a child would own a toy robot? And there is the ghost of a child walking around these very halls, a young girl who's been seen here frequently. She seems to be stuck in the old chateau with some unfinished business, and that paints a very different picture if she's the writer. Because if she is, it means that Rotom was her friend, and when she startled him, he accidentally electrocuted her, killing her. Like I said earlier, Pokemon Masters, one of the main reasons in folklore that spirits remain attached to the earth is that they feel they have unfinished business here. The little girl had a lot of unfinished business. She needed to find her friend Rotom and tell him that he wasn't to blame for her passing out. Of course, as we know from her perspective, she would have just blacked out and woken up, but it seems more than likely that in fact that's when she died and wrote the rest of the notebook from beyond the grave. Another good indicator is that that is what happened, is that her toy robot was found in the trash heap of her nearby town. Why was it there instead of just in her bedroom waiting for her? Or maybe it's because her parents threw it out, because with the toy, they were abandoning it, much like the old chateau. Luckily, the story ends with the two of them reuniting, the little girl and Rotom, best friends back together, and finally, now that they're both ghosts, they can hug. It's the only way that comment makes sense. The story ends with them saying that they'll spend the rest of their lives together. ... Seriously, that's how it ends. It ends with a ... a to be continued. This isn't the end. There was something left unsaid about that last comment. The rest of their lives together. Sure thing. Then again, I suppose you and I, we have all of eternity to think about that. Pokemon Masters.
Masters, Toby here, and it is spooky month, which means we've got to start talking about ghost-type Pokemon. Particularly, I want to talk about one of my favorite ghost-type Pokemon, Rotom. I love this Pokemon, and by the way, if Rotom is available in the early game of Diamond and Pearl for Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, I recommend you pick one up for your team. In the original Diamond and Pearl, you couldn't get it until the post-game, until after the National Dex. This led, at the time, there to be a lot of intrigue about Rotom, and actually, as far back to year 1 of this channel, I was making Rotom Pokemon theories with the Rotom boy himself, Game Boy Luke. Now we are, look at us, little young people, that was 6 years ago. Making theories about Rotom, and there's been no shortage of them ever since. There's been plenty of theories about Rotom out there. I think I've had 5 on this channel. I've seen at least 5 or 6 others across YouTube in that time. And so today, to celebrate the spoopy month, but also the upcoming Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, I wanted to celebrate by talking about my 5 favorite Rotom theories. I'll be giving all of the evidence as well as including any new evidence that we've discovered in the time since. And of course, because this video has Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl in the title, means that if you leave a comment letting me know if you have any Rotom theories, you're in with the chance of winning a copy of Brilliant Diamond or Shining Pearl. No, sorry, Legends Arceus. I'm giving away Legends Arceus. 3 copies, worldwide giveaway. Anyone can win just by commenting. Anyway, sorry, muzzled, duzzled brain. I think there's a Rotom in there somewhere. So let's play the intro and join me after for 5 theories about Rotom. Okay, Pokemon Masters, so we're going to start off with a classic one. This was much more acceptable in 2015 and 16 as a fully fledged theory, and it does make sense. It's just not long enough to make an ad revenue collecting video off of. And that is the theory that Rotom and Shuppet are related. More specifically, that a Shuppet is a Rotom with the item the Reaper Cloth drenched over its head. Okay, first off, what's the evidence? Both of them look alike. They're floating spherical ghosts, and of course they have the same shape with the point on the head. Okay, but Toby, that can't be all you have for it, and no, absolutely it's not. We know the Reaper Cloth has ghost transforming abilities. It's the evolution trade item for the Duskull line from Dusclops into Duskanoir, which the Duskull line and Shuppet kind of were parallels of each other in Generation 3, with I have a feeling, I don't think they were version exclusive, but their ratios, the odds of finding them were maybe swapped around between Ruby and Sapphire. Or maybe I'm just making that up. Huh, Rotom's up there again. Anyway, however, it is interesting to note that both Shuppet and Rotom are part of the same egg group. The shiny version of Shuppet is sort of illuminated with the plasma color of Rotom. Okay, maybe not with that one. Again, really, it made more sense back in 2015. Anyway, but it is interesting to note, and I still agree with the fact that Shuppet can learn a surprising amount of electric moves. It can learn up to 5, which is only a few less than Rotom could at the time. Additionally, the idea that Shuppet will have lost its electric typing from when it was a Rotom is due to the fact that the Reaper Cloth might insulate electricity, which is a pretty common thing that certain materials do. They insulate stuff. Okay, but we're saving the best till last. That is, of course, that Shuppet evolves into Banette, a prankster Pokemon that likes to possess dolls, or is an abandoned doll. Meanwhile, that's what Rotom loves to do, possess machinery and electronics, but no longer being an electric type Pokemon, it can't do that anymore, so it can only possess other materials like the material that it's inhabiting, which is the Reaper Cloth. And so there you have it. Those are the connections. Shuppet and Rotom are closely related, and if you took a Reaper Cloth and threw it over a Rotom, it would transform into a Shuppet. What do you think? Is this one likely? The next Pokemon theory about Rotom is one that again ties into that initial intrigue. Actually, it's the other half of the collaboration I did with Luke back then, and that is the idea that Rotom is a legendary Pokemon, or at least it was intended to be. Because in the original Diamond and Pearl, you couldn't catch Rotom until after you got the National Dex. Now, it's not only legendary Pokemon that you could obtain after the National Dex. There were a bunch of other Sinnoh Pokemon, Rhyperior, Glaceon, Leafeon, Licky, Tangrowth, the list goes on, but Rotom was the only one that wasn't an evolution of past Pokemon. Additionally, it's right next to the Lake Trio, the Lake Spirits, in the Pokedex, putting it somewhere between these new Sinnoh Pokemon and legendary Pokemon. But the real nail in the coffin for it was when you encountered Rotom in the old chateau, it would play the legendary encounter music from Diamond and Pearl. That music would only appear when you encountered legendary Pokemon, and it was a one-of. It was a static encounter, unlike these other evolution Pokemon where you could just keep on evolving like Togetix into Togekisses. Rotom was one of one. It does of course have an egg group, so in that sense it's not as close to legendaries, but you could also breed Manaphy in that generation. Sure, you'd get Fiona, but the point is the rules were starting to bend in Generation 4. So maybe there's this idea, this intention that Rotom was originally supposed to be a legendary Pokemon. In fact, we see, even by Pokemon's own standard, in the animated series in the 3rd movie, we see a book filled with legendary Pokemon, and we see pictures of the unknown Pokemon that according to the game's code are not legendary Pokemon. Similarly, in the 1st episode or 2nd episode of the Pokemon animated series, we see Arcanine, the legendary Pokemon by its Pokedex description, there on the wall next to Moltres, Zapdos, and Articuno. So maybe Rotom was originally intended to be a legendary, or perhaps in the world of Pokemon lore, it used to be a legendary, but it's not anymore. The 3rd theory that I have for you is by my friend Exelian, and it's a pretty short one, but I love it. This is because Rotom has also become our guide to the Pokedex. Pokédex. See, in days of old, the Pokédex would just record data, I guess put in it either by Pokemon professors or by Pokemon trainers going around the Pokemon world. You'd do the field work, see the Pokemon behaving in the wild, and you put in that information into the Pokédex to create a complete encyclopedia of all Pokemon information. But as of Pokemon X and Y, the Pokédex transforms and becomes the Rotom Dex. Except that wasn't X and Y. That's a generation too soon. It was Sun and Moon. Though there is another theory, although I think it's more like confirmed lore now, that it was Clement from X and Y who actually developed the Rotom Dex technology. Anyway, Sun and Moon, Rotom Dex. And something else happened in Pokemon Sun and Moon. Pokédex entries started getting really dark. There was Gengars and Mimikyus that talked about death and people dying, but also Toxapexes was just like brutal. And the theory here is simple. This is because this information is not accurate. It's not accurate Pokemon information. It's being toyed with and played with by the Rotom in the device. Because again, Rotom has Pokédex entries of its own, talking about how it is a prankster, how it loves to cause mischief. And on top of that, it's a ghost, so it would be more inclined to tell ghost stories. So the idea is actually all of the Pokédex information from Sun and Moon onwards is very unreliable because it's all being told through the lens of a very mischievous Rotom. Mischievous Rotom. Pokemon theory for Rotom number 4 was given to me by Super Nerd Quiz Clown, a community member. And again, it's another one of those possession ones that I love because that's what Rotom does. It possesses electrical equipment. And there's this theory, this idea that like Voltorb is a possessed Pokeball, specifically of Haunter because they have similar eyes. But that doesn't make sense because there are so many other theories about the origin of Ghastly and Haunter and Gengar that's like its own video that we've covered actually on this channel, I think, before. But what would make more sense than Haunter possessing a Pokeball to become a Voltorb is Rotom possessing a Pokeball to become a Voltorb. See, Pokeballs are electrical devices that are everywhere in the Pokemon world. Rotom would be very attracted to them. And by the way, if you're wondering, the Pokeball definitely came first. Voltorb has Pokedex entries like in Ruby that said that they were first encountered in Pokeball factories. And in fact, there's Pokedex entries that talk about the fact that a pulse of energy hit a Pokeball, turning it into Voltorb or Electrode. And a pulse is a very specific word because Rotom is inspired by the video game Pulseman, one of Game Freak's other much earlier titles. It's inspired by the main character. Rotom is the pulse of energy that hit the Pokeball, but whereas usually when Rotom takes over machinery, it takes control of it and has fun and causes mischief, what Rotom doesn't realize when it takes over a Pokeball in a Pokeball factory is, Pokeballs are designed to capture and retain the Pokemon, meaning Rotom can no longer escape, making it very angry. So angry that it tries to use all of its electrical power to explode, which is why that's what Voltorb and Electrode love to do. They're able to do it completely without hurting themselves, not really, other than their HP lowering. Electrode love to explode. This is the Rotom saying, hey, let me out, and if you can't let me out, I'm going to cause a lot of mischief. And that is how the Voltorb species appeared. It is interesting to note that when you can find Rotom in the wild in Pokemon, it's typically in areas like the old chateau, old mansions where new technologies like Pokeballs, like Pokeball is the Pokeball is less likely to appear. And number 5, we have to go back to the old chateau and talk about the old notebook that you can find there. This is one of my favorite Pokemon theories. I've covered it in a Pokemon epic before in the old chateau, and I've actually got an upcoming video, another Pokemon epic for Halloween that kind of ties into this as well. But in Pokemon Platinum, there's an old notebook that you can find in the old chateau where you find Rotom, which simply says something so peculiar happened with the motor. Sorry, something so peculiar made off with the motor. This is of course talking about the peculiar Pokemon Rotom making off with the motor, but what's interesting is this is the old notebook, and a duplicate notebook can be found in the Team Galactic headquarters that exists in Eterna City. You can only get in there with a secret key, and there the Team Galactic admin Charon is researching Rotom, which is really weird because Team Galactic don't really have any ties or need for a Rotom. Team Galactic are interested in Dialga and Palkia and other dimensions, and sure, they go after other legendary Pokemon, and Charon in the manga goes after other legendaries like Heatran, but Rotom doesn't tie into their plans at all. The only other tie here is that I think the Galactic Gang, or the Galaxy Gang, were the main villains in that Pulseman game that I mentioned, but other than that, there's not really a connection between Team Galactic and Rotom. But there is here. And for the longest time, I speculated something. That Team Galactic's glorious leader, Cyrus, the nihilist who doesn't care about this world, who hates spirit with a passion and strong emotions, even though hate is an emotion, that he used to live in the old chateau. See, in Pokemon Platinum, to add a little bit more backstory to his character, we meet his grandfather in the Battle Resort area, and the grandfather says that growing up, Cyrus lived in Sunyshore City, but the grandfather regrets not taking him in. Why would he need to take him in? Maybe before Sunyshore, Cyrus lived in the old chateau. The old notebook that appears in the Team Galactic headquarters tells more of the story, about a young child who didn't really have many friends, who loved to play with his robots, which is exactly what the grandfather who in the Battle Resort says about Cyrus, that he was antisocial, but he loved playing with his machines, his toys, tinkering with them and playing with robots. Until one day, in the old chateau, so the notebook says, this young child was startled when the robot came to life. It was possessed by Rotom, and they actually became friends, until one day the little boy startled Rotom, causing it to discharge electricity, and then eventually the robot was thrown in the trash. My theory is that it was this discharge of electricity that killed the two people that became the butler and the little girl who exist in the old chateau, their ghosts roaming the halls. This is the event that turned Cyrus into a nihilist. The one friendship that he had when he was an antisocial child turned, well, not just badly, but to actual death of his family members. This made him hate the world and wanted to create a world without spirit, because he's literally trying to escape the spirits that live in the old chateau. And over the years, I've just wondered if heading towards Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, whether we'd see any more confirmation of this. And actually, we have. In the Rainbow Rocket episode of Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Cyrus is of course one of the leaders of Team Rainbow Rocket, one of the admins. You battle him. Right before you battle him, the Rotom Dex jumps out of your pocket and Cyrus makes a comment. He says, even in this world, Rotom is, and then trails off and gets ready to battle you. And then in Pokemon Masters, the most eye-opening bit of character development for Cyrus happens. Cyrus meets Sun and Moon's Sophocles, a young boy who's kind of antisocial, who loves tinkering with his machines. Sophocles is shy and reminds Cyrus of a younger him, but additionally, Cyrus makes a comment about the fact that Sophocles' partner Pokemon here is Rotom. He asks, is this Rotom yours? And Sophocles says he's just looking after it for another trainer, but this Rotom really seems to like you, mister. Who are you? And he explains that he's Cyrus, and actually gives Sophocles the time of day for a conversation. In fact, so much time that day turns to night, and then Cyrus starts talking about, like, has explained all of the ways in which Rotom can use its different forms. Cyrus knows a lot about Rotom personally. This isn't just a Team Galactic research mission that's happening in the Galactic headquarters in Eterna City. This is like, Cyrus knows Rotom, that it's a Pokemon that he's used before. Cyrus actually kind of cracks a smile and sees himself in Sophocles and tries to plead with Sophocles and sort of say, do you understand my vision? Like, join Team Galactic, effectively. But Sophocles is like, wait, hang on. No, like, I like people and I like emotions. I think emotions are good. To which Cyrus sort of says, you'll never understand, because what Cyrus has been through was so traumatic and it's tied deeply into Rotom. And in my opinion, the entire pre-story that involves the old chateau. And the big thing that Cyrus says that is so poignant in this is that he says to Sophocles, you remind me of a child I know well. He's talking about himself in the third person, because that child version of him is long gone, dead, as he is now Cyrus, the leader of Team Galactic, and Rotom was his only pathway back to the light, but I think it might be too late for him. And then there's a really awesome battle where Cynthia shows up with her Komodo and her cool new outfit. I hope we get that outfit in Legends Arceus. That'd be awesome. Anyway, Okay, Pokemon Masters, if you're still here, then I guess you really want to learn. And heck, maybe you already know something about Shadow Pokemon. Perhaps you've seen past videos of mine on the subject, or you've played through either Ori Adventure. Pokemon Colosseum and Gale of Darkness has you confronting these terrifying Pokemon head-on. In both of these Nintendo GameCube games, you don't catch wild Pokemon. Instead, you'll play as a character catching other people's Pokemon using what's called a snag machine. This is done in the name of justice, reclaiming Shadow Pokemon from the evil Team Snag'em and Team Cypher. Shadow Pokemon are Pokemon with the doors to their hearts locked off. Instead of having access to their usual moves, they fight more aggressively using shadow moves, and sometimes they even attack their own trainers. Now, of course, in the games, your goal is to snag all of the Shadow Pokemon, to claim them for yourself, to treat them with love, kindness, and care, to send them out into healthy Pokemon battles, to call their names if needed, to eventually get to a point where you can purify them and turn them back into regular old Pokemon. In Pokemon Gale of Darkness, we actually learn that there is a purification machine, a bit of technology that you can stuff your Pokemon inside to make it happy. It looks comfier than this. In that machine, alongside regular Pokemon, your Shadow Pokemon will enter a state of flow, a state of calm that will allow it to revert back to a regular Pokemon. This means that changing in and out of this state is biological, it's physiological, it's tied to the very being of the Pokemon. It's not just a Pokemon having a grump and throwing a tantrum. If that was the case, then Ash's Pikachu at the beginning of I Choose You, that would definitely be a Shadow Pokemon, but it's not, he's just grumpy. And to be fair, if I had to travel with Ash, I probably would be too. It is interesting to note, however, that in that I Choose You movie, all of the wild Pokemon get corrupted when a trainer with an impure heart touches the Rainbow Wing. They then come under the control of Mars Shadow, and they get this purpley aura and aggression towards trainers. But for Shadow Pokemon, it can be more than just purple eyes and a little bit of an aggression. As we see in XD Gale of Darkness, XD001 is the codename for the box art Pokemon, Shadow Lugia, an entirely new form of Lugia altogether, created by the admin, Lovrina. She, through her twisted methods, has found a way to create the ultimate Shadow Pokemon, a Pokemon that supposedly cannot be reverted back. And these pure Shadow Pokemon we've actually seen a few times in the franchise. In Pokkén Tournament, we see the Shadow Mewtwo corrupted in its nature by a Synergy Stone. And in the Pokemon movie Forever, we see the Iron Masked Marauder, a high-ranking member of Team Rocket, capture a Celebi and turn it into a new dark form of itself. This is actually reflected in the card game in the Dark Celebi card. And this transformation is happening as the result of a Dark Ball. This is a special kind of Pokeball that seems to be changing the essence of the Pokemon, capturing them, as we see with this weak and sad Tyranitar, and ultimately changing them, turning the Tyranitar into a monstrous version of itself that Brock identifies as having something funny about it. So it seems that turning a Pokemon from a regular Pokemon and a Shadow Pokemon can also be done with the power of technology, a technology owned by a Team Rocket member. And when we consider that Team Rocket might be behind this, it's not totally weird. I've done videos about this before. When we look to the hierarchical structure of Team Snag'em, we see that they are a group of low-level thieves and grunts that ultimately are really being controlled by Team Cypher, who are scientists, and that's the same as Team Rocket, who have their grunts and then their scientists. And with both teams, their enigmatic leaders are high-ranking members of society, with Giovanni being a gym leader and Cypher's leader being a mayor. And of course, those of you who have taken on Team Go Rocket will know, because Professor Willow says so, that Team Go Rocket seem to be behind the Shadow Pokemon phenomenon. We learn that Team Go Rocket must be behind the Shadow Pokemon phenomenon, exaggerating their strength, overpowering them, causing them a great deal of pain with their uncontrollable newfound power. All of these Pokemon getting a shadowy aura, apart from, interestingly enough, Mewtwo. But this MO isn't unlike Team Rocket. We saw them try the exact same thing at the Lake of Rage, where they tried to overpower Magikarp and force them to evolve using radio tower waves. Honestly, this is just what Team Rocket does. And this connection is even backed up by Lovrina, the very admin that turned Lugia into Shadow Lugia. Her main Pokemon are Luvdisc and a Shadow Delcatty, and in the Pokemon animated series we meet Dr. Namba, a high-ranking scientist within Team Rocket who, in the Whirl Island arc, is trying to steal a Lugia and its baby. Why does he want this Lugia? Perhaps to turn it into a Shadow Pokemon, and interestingly enough, he also appears in the Pokemon Chronicles series over the control of Butch and Cassidy, and with those at his disposal, he sends them off to catch a Luvdisc and a Delcatty. But that might just be a coincidence. I mean, he's not a very big character, and he only appears one more time after that, so, yeah, sure, complete coincidence. Coincidence. Despite the fact that in those very Whirl Island episodes, he's also trying out his Rage Crown technology, a technology that causes the Pokemon to become more powerful and more aggressive. As I alluded to earlier, further connections to Shadow Pokemon can of course be seen in the Pokemon card game, in 3 different sets primarily. In the sets Team Rocket, EX Team Rocket Returns, and Neo Destiny, and no guesses as to what the theming of 2 of 3 of those sets are. These dark Pokemon in the card game seem to be an exact equivalent to Shadow Pokemon. I even mentioned the Dark Celebi, which is from another set, which ultimately is a reflection of the Celebi from the 4th movie. But let's take a quick look at that other set, Neo Destiny, whose blurb reads, "To light and to darkness. Pokemon bathed in mysterious light and Pokemon shrouded in darkness. What is their connection to Team Rocket? The mystery deepens and the adventure never ends." And actually what we learn when we look at these new light Pokemon that counteract the dark Pokemon is that they have higher HP than their regular Pokemon forms, and they tend to have attacks that aid other Pokemon in battle. They're all about companionship and training together. And of course, on point to their characters, they're all very, very happy in their artworks. Just look at that dugong. But this to me then begs the question, if we've got Shadow and Dark Pokemon and then a sort of pure Shadow Pokemon that can't be changed, like the Lugia and the Celebi and the Mewtwo, do we have a version of this for light Pokemon with a strong bond with their trainer that kind of excel and become more powerful? You might immediately go, Toby, what about Mega Evolution? But Mega Evolution really isn't this. At first it seems so. I mean, Mega Pokemon, they only are able to Mega Evolve when there's a strong bond with the trainer that they're with, but ultimately their Pokedex entries describe some horrifying things. Salamance's Pokedex entry tells us that the stress of its 2 proud wings becoming misshapen and stuck together because of a strong energy makes it go on a rampage. And according to Aerodactyl's Pokedex entry, when it Mega Evolves, it becomes more vicious than ever. Some say that's because of the excess of power causing it pain. Occasionally, there are advantages to Mega Evolution. Pince's entry says that bathed in the energy of Mega Evolution, its wings become unusually developed. It flies at speeds of approximately 30 miles an hour. And while practically that's very, very useful for a trainer and in battle, it might not be so good naturally for the Pokemon. It seems these Pokemon have been artificially inflated in power, and they sound a lot like Shadow Pokemon themselves. On top of that, in the Megaena and Volcanion movie, we actually see Mega Pokemon take on that same shadowy aura and becoming aggressive towards trainers. Seemingly, these Pokemon can become Shadow Pokemon too. So we've got our normal Pokemon, Shadow Pokemon, and Light Pokemon, and then we've got pure Shadow Pokemon, and maybe Mega Evolution is more of an in-between, a neutral, where there are benefits to it, and it can only happen with a strong bond with a trainer, but ultimately it does lead to some pain, so it's kind of in the middle. And we're still left wondering, what is the alternative for Light Pokemon? Perhaps Gigantamax? Well, I think probably not. When we look to Gigantamax Pokemon, their Gmax forms seem to be projections. It's been mentioned in interviews, and I think in-game as well, that these Pokemon, they don't really have anything to do with the nature of the Pokemon being good or bad, light or dark. But instead, I want to suggest a Pokemon that has an unbreakable bond with its trainer, so much so that it actually changes its form to look like the trainer it's working with. We've only seen it once in the whole of Pokemon, and I'm talking about Ash Greninja. The Ash Greninja, or Battle Bond Greninja, may well be a reflection to this. A Pokemon so good, so pure, so bonded with a trainer that it seems to exceed evolution, becoming this new form. And I don't know, maybe it's the case that Battle Bond Greninja really is the kind of parallel to pure Shadow Pokemon, but then again, the transformation is only temporary, so I'm not so sure. Hey Pokemon Masters, Future Toby here. Also, many of you might be thinking about the new Illumina Pokemon from the new Pokemon Snap game, and I actually do think that could be a good candidate for the lightest kind of Pokemon. I mean, they're literally light, but I'll have a full theory about that next week. Another example, though, of a Pokemon going from regular and becoming